Mr. Chairman, can I do a mic check?
Yeah, Commissioner Grace, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I can hear you. Thank you.
All right. Good evening. Welcome to Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for January 4th, 2024. This time I'll call the meeting to order. Commissioners who are present for this evening's meeting are at City Hall and on Zoom. We also have staff from the city attorney and clerk's offices, as well as the city planning department. If you're joining us on Zoom this evening, we can see that you're here. You may observe the meeting. However, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, you'll be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take questions until the public testimony portion. If you have a question during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org and they will reply as quickly as possible. Simply want to watch the meeting, we encourage you to do so on the city's YouTube channel. You can access that at meridiancity.org/live. With that, let's begin with roll call. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Maria Lorcher was attending. There she is. Sorry for that. She was on and then she.
Oh, that's okay. Technology. It's great when it works.
Thank you, Chairperson Seal. Let's begin with Commissioner Wheeler.
Present.
Commissioner Rivera.
Present.
Commissioner Lorcher.
Present.
Commissioner Grace.
Here.
Chairperson Seal.
Here. All right, so the first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. File H 2023-0045 for Farmstone Crossing subdivision will be opened for the sole purpose of continuing to a regular scheduled meeting. It will be open for that purpose alone. So if there's anybody here tonight to testify for that particular application, we will not be taking public testimony this evening. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Make a motion to accept the agenda.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and we have one item on the consent agenda, which is to approve the minutes of the December 7th, 2023 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
I move that we approve the minutes of the December 7th, 2003 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 Nay, or opposed, nay. Motion carries. Who do we have on? All right. So at this time, I'd like to briefly explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. Staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and unified development code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case and respond to staff comments. They will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant has finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will be called on only once during the public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who have signed up on our website in advance to testify. Excuse me. You will then be unmuted in Zoom, or you can come to the microphones in chambers. You'll need to state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you have previously sent pictures or a presentation for the meeting, it will be displayed on screen. You will be able to run the presentation. If you have established that you are speaking on behalf of a larger group like an HOA, where others from that group will allow you to speak on their behalf, you will have up to 10 minutes. After all of those who have signed in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who may wish to testify. If you wish to speak on the topic, you may come forward in chambers, or if on Zoom, press the raise hand button on the Zoom app. Or if you're listening on a phone, please press *9 and wait for your name to be called. If you're listening on multiple devices, such as a computer and a phone, for example, please be sure to mute the extra devices so we do not experience feedback and we can hear you clearly. When you're finished, if the commission does not have questions for you, or return to your seat in chambers or be muted on Zoom and no longer have the ability to speak. And please remember, we generally do not call folks back up a second time. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing. The commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make final recommendations or decisions to City Council as needed. So at this time, I would like to open the Public hearing for Farmstone Crossing subdivision, file number H 2023-0045 for continuance to the date of February 1st, 2024.
So moved?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to continue file number H 2023-0045 for Farmstone Crossing subdivision to the date of February 1st, 2024. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. It has continued. Now we'd like to open up the public hearing for item number H 2023-0059 for the Kleiner adjacent subdivision, and we will begin with the staff report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the commission, it feels like it's been about 3 months since I've seen all of you, but Happy New Year to all of you.
Thank you, you too.
Hopefully there'll be a brief meeting tonight. So I'm here this evening presenting the Kleiner adjacent subdivision on behalf of Sonia this evening. And so the application before you tonight is what we call a combined preliminary final plat. The property consists of 9.88 acres of land. It's currently zone CG in the city limits and is located at 1730 North Records Way, which is at the northeast corner of Records and Fairview Avenue. In 2022, the city did approve a conditional use permit for this site to develop 472 multifamily units on that property. The applicant has received approval of a time extension, so that CUP is still valid. And tonight, all they're proposing to do here is take the one lot and subdivide it into 2 buildable lots. Main reason for that, when we met with the applicant, so just a little bit of a background here, the multifamily project is still going to move forward, but as far as for financial reasons, they are required to subdivide the property to start construction of the site. And so really this is just more of a formality than anything. They have a legal parcel and they have the right to develop now under that conditional use permit. So again, it's just adding 1 lot to 2 lots. You can see here, it's cut off a little bit, but there is an access on the west boundary here from Records. That's a right in, right out only. That was approved by ACHD with the CUP permit. And then there's also a shared driveway with the car dealership CarMax to the east that they'll have access to and share with that adjacent property. Staff is required that they provide us evidence of that cross-access agreement prior to construction. More than likely, they probably did that with their CU or their CZC, but again, sometimes these conditions just carry over from the previous approvals. The required landscape buffers were all evaluated with the conditional use permit as well. We had a chance in this particular staff report, we did note though, because of ACHD's requirement for the right-hand turn lane and their requirements for their frontage improvements along Fairview, that their buffers along Fairview will be less than the 35 feet required by code. So the applicant has agreed to submit their alternative compliance request prior to the city council hearing, and they've been conditioned to do that as well. And that'll give council the ability to act on that request as well. So we did receive written confirmation from the applicant that they're in agreement with all conditions in the staff report, including the request for the additional application prior to city council. With that, staff is recommending approval, and I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Bill. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Mr. Chair, for the record, John Wardle with Brighton, 2929 West Navigator, Suite 400, Meridian, Idaho, 83642. If I could be made a participant, and then Bill, can I share my screen? Panelist, that's what it is. Thank you.
Careful, you'll be running the technology here.
We've had a lot of technology today, so let's see how I go with this one. Earlier was a little iffy. All right. Commissioners, good evening. Happy New Year to you. I will be fairly brief on this. The opening statement is we do agree with the conditions which are in the staff report. As Bill indicated, this project has a little bit of history. Some of you may have been here when it was previously reviewed for the CUP, but for your information, there was a CUP approved back in 2022. and approved the 472 residences here and site plan approval. We did get a CZCDR approval for the project in 2022 as well in September. Upon that approval, then we submitted for building permits, which have been reviewed. I believe they are ready to issue with the exception of us paying for the fees. On the timeline here, and so let me just back up. So we have gone through the CUP, which is approved. This design review has also been approved and building permits have been applied for and have gone through the process of review as well. So what are we doing tonight? We're requesting a 2-lot subdivision. Showing you here, we have lot 1 in yellow, lot 2 in blue. As you may appreciate, financing has become a little tricky. Construction costs are still high. And with the financing package on this specifically, our lender has asked that because the project will be phased, we will be building the south building on the blue parcel first. We'll be doing all the site improvements at the same time, but the first building, which is on the south, let me go back here, will be built first. But the lender requires that it be on its own parcel because there's a future phase. And so we met with staff. The only way that we could do that was to do a preliminary final plat, which is before you tonight. As I mentioned, we will be doing all the site improvements on the project at the same time, but we will only be constructing the south building and the amenity building, everything that's shown here in blue. At a later date, we'll come back and build phase 2 of the project. This one's a little cleaner, if that's a better exhibit for you, pulling those phase lines off. Again, we are moving forward with the project, but it has came up really kind of back in late October. So we met with staff about what the process was. We held a pre-application meeting, we did a neighborhood meeting, and we're here before you. It really is it's a lending requirement. We could move forward today with the project, but because of that financing requirement, we need to plat it. So once that is done, and that's why we're doing a preliminary final where we can do no more than 4 lots under a preliminary final plat. We concur with the staff recommendation, and we're asking for your affirmative recommendation to the city council of this preliminary final plat. And I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Commissioners?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So John, on the amenities, those are going to be done during phase 1, or does that include the pool too?
It does. Let me go back here. You probably don't see my mouse, but everything that's in blue, the amenity building is an L-shaped building. There's a swimming pool there, and then there's a little rectangle box up here, and that's a pool house, outdoor restrooms, things like that. So that is all done with phase 1. So the amenities for the entire project are done at the start of the project. Okay. When we do phase 2 actually connects directly to that amenity building. There is breezeways that allow tenants in phase 2 to access directly in the amenities without going outside. And so we have to do the phase 1 first to make that happen. But yes, we want to get the amenities in at the very beginning. We will also be doing all of the site improvements, which include the parking lots and landscape buffers on the entire project at the very beginning. So that'll all be done. So when we do phase 2, it is parking structure and then 4 levels of apartments above that.
Okay, and this is a 4/2?
It is a 4/1.
4/1, okay.
5 stories, one level of parking, and then there's some surface parking as well, but 4 stories of apartments above.
And you're going to put in the asphalt parking in as part of the phase 1, even on the second phase?
We have some access requirements. We do have 2 access points that come over to the shared driveway between us and, maybe I can go to, it shows a little bit better. There's a shared access between us and CarMax.
Okay.
And so we have an access here and we have an access here, and then we have an access over on Records, but we are going to be installing all of the surface parking and all of the landscaping at the very beginning of the project. And then we'll come back and do phase 2, which would be the second building some point in the future.
Okay. Yeah, I don't envy development now. with all the stuff and the requirements, not only with the construction costs, but also the lending requirements too, so.
Part of the reason for doing that is we have both sewer and water that go through the entire site, storm drainage as well. The reason for paving it at once, if we don't pave it and City of Meridian requires that there be a mountable surface of the sewer and water lines. And so it's in the parking lots anyways, so yeah, we'll just do it all at once.
Is that gonna negatively affect later though, for like your laydown areas and the heaviest machinery going through there and you'll have to resurface it later too?
It's possible, but we should be able to do all of our construction in that laydown area in the parking that's not needed for the other residents.
Okay.
So it will be a tight site. If you saw what we did at the Bree project to the north of the village, it is complicated, but it can be done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then I had one question for staff, if that's okay.
Yeah, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. You said that the 35-foot buffer had to be less because of some access requirements, is that correct?
Frontage improvements.
Frontage improvements, okay. Okay,
Yeah, they have to put a right-hand turn lane in, I believe.
oh, gotcha, okay.
If I can maybe clarify that just a little bit, add a little bit of
Please.
color to it. We requested alternative compliance for records already. So there was an alternative compliance request that we did because of this. ACHG came back last minute and asked for that right turn coming off of records into the site. And so that's already been approved. What really came up in the staff report this time was the question along Fairview. There's a couple of things there. As you know, Fairview at the moment at this location does not have a curb. We are building out, we're actually improving their storm drainage because it is what their rural section, which doesn't have a curb, they do a sand window. And so we actually are grassing down to the edge of the sand window, but ACHG doesn't allow us to grass on the other side of the sand window adjacent to the asphalt. If there was a curb line, it would all be grass and you wouldn't know that. So the alternative requirement or alternative request in this moment is because we have that gravel there, which is within the 35-foot landscape buffer, we have to ask for that requirement or that alternative compliance. So we do have it, but the ACHG hasn't determined what their final build out is, where the curb line exactly will go. So we're putting the sand window in and we just cannot put grass on the south side of that sand window. So that's what we're really talking about. There's probably about maybe 2 feet of extra gravel that falls within the landscape buffer.
Okay,
But the other alternative compliance request on records has already been approved by staff after the conditional use permit was done.
perfect, okay, thank you. And then one other question for staff here. We don't have to worry about like an extra DA or modifying that with the parcel split here. It's approved and we don't have to do anything like that, right? Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, there's a DA in place and it's going to run with the land and stay with this property. So whoever buys one parcel or both parcels, or if it stays under one ownership, it's going to stay intact. And that's what's unique about this particular project. And that's what we talked with the applicant about too, is we want to make sure whatever we do on this is because there are two different sites and 2 different buildings, they'll have the necessary paperwork in place to make sure that there's drainage is shared between both properties and parking and amenities are all being shared, but for the overall development, not. So each building won't be independent of one another. They'll still be tied together through either CC&Rs or however they deem best to set that up for either themselves or any future owners going forward.
Perfect, okay, thank you. Thank you, John.
Quick question, the private drive between this property and the CarMax, does that have access to Fairview Avenue?
Mr. Chair, it does not. It's never been approved for an access directly to Fairview. So it's an access between our 2 properties and we can get out to Eldon Gray, but we also both have accesses out to the other side. I think CarMax, I don't know exactly how they're using that. It clearly would be an access for us because if you're coming into our project, coming south on Records, you're going to go around the roundabout, head east on Eldon Gray and come in. Or if you're coming in off Fairview, you can do a right hand in. So, but the access is, we do have an easement a cross-access easement on that with them. So that's already been established.
Okay, and part of the reason that I asked that question is knowing that the northern units are going to be last to develop. Is there something you can do to help during the construction phase of the first phase that will help kind of keep the construction traffic off of, you know, the main roads there? I mean, you're going to have to come in records for, you know, quite a bit of this, I would imagine, but trying to keep it off of the road that runs east-west to the north of the property. I mean, is there anything that can be, and I know that's a tough, tricky question to ask, but I know that that's going to be a concern, especially for the folks that live, you know, a little bit more north up the road there. So,
So there's two, Mr. Chair, there's two items at play here. One is additional access to an arterial roadway, which is Fairview, is a no-go. And we actually had to ask, as part of our conditional use permit, we had to go to council. You acted on the conditional use permit, you approved it, but we had to go to council to actually get this right in, right out approved on records.
right.
And so, you know, this access between us and CarMax is a shared access. For all intents and purposes, will act as a primary access. And I think we would assume that most, if not all, of our construction traffic will come in off of Eldon Gray into this. I can assure you, we do not want our large construction vehicles circling the parking lot to the south and coming back up. And so that's really where we will be. We'll be off of Eldon Gray into that shared access between us and CarMax.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. There's just yeah, I just have a couple of, to me, it's concerning because there's already a lot going on. The village is a place, there's a lot of youth that gather there. There's a lot of kids that are there. They're going to be coming in from all over the place. So I mean, my concern is just kind of the safety of them and, you know, being less impactful on the residents that are already there, because this is going to, I mean, construction is probably going to go on for quite a while. So just throwing out some ideas, you know, to kind of help us all be good neighbors.
Mr. Chair, I do know that there are phases of construction. There are moments when it's super heavy, candidly, when concrete is being poured, something like this where we have a parking structure. I mean, there's a fair amount of activity. Those activity moments tend to be off-peak. I can't guarantee that they will, but I know that when we did the parking structure for Bree, that was done overnight, and that was poured at times where it made sense for them. Will that be, can I guarantee that? No. But I do know that as well, from an efficiency perspective, that our subcontractors like to bring on as much material as possible at one time so they can operate with that. We panelized a lot of our other projects. So those wall structures are coming in and they're able to put a lot of those up fairly quickly. So there are ways from a construction perspective, but I can't tell you that there will not be an impact, because candidly there will. Right? At least we're not selling hamburgers.
True. Very true. I've had to make my way out of that area. So so far I have not had one of the hamburgers. So, but very good point.
Lines aren't quite as bad in Utah or Vegas. So
That's right.
going there.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Grace, do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you earlier, but a couple questions if I could, John. Just to touch on I want to make sure I understood this correctly, the parking structure. I think I know what you were saying, but essentially what I wanted to know is after phase one is done and prior to phase two being completed, there'll be adequate parking for phase one residents, right? I thought I heard you say the structure was under the north building, or is it under both?
Mr. Chair, I answer that question first. Each building, the south and the north, each have parking structures.
Okay.
And then there is surface parking. We actually, you can kind of see it, the amenity or the blue area here provides more parking and will be finished right up against the sidewalk on the north building. So yes, there is sufficient parking for phase one as a standalone as we do all the site work, even as we exclude north of phase two. So that there won't be, we meet the parking requirement. So then when we open phase two, we can use, everybody can use all the surface parking without restriction.
Yeah, good. You meet them independently, which is what I was driving at. My next question is, do you happen to know, is there going to be any kind of a crosswalk across Records more, I guess, more north than that Fairview intersection? Strikes me that a lot of residents might be heading west there to partake of all the amenities over at the village. I'm just wondering if you know what that might look like.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Grace, see if I can do this. The locations to get across Records will be here, down at Fairview,
Mhm.
and up at the roundabout. There won't be any pedestrian access at that location. There's actually a raised curb through there, and it doesn't make sense to go across. There will also be access to the park here. I will note as well that we are building a 10-foot sidewalk along Fairview and along the frontage of Records, so that there is good connectivity up to Kleiner Park. But yes, the only access points will be just south of the roundabout and just north of Fairview. And there won't be, sometimes you see this, Commissioner Grace, that there's a pedestrian ramp kind of directing pedestrians a certain direction. There will not be a pedestrian ramp that would allow that would really point somebody that way. It doesn't mean, again, we can't fix or solve for every moment. People will try to run across there. It will happen, but we are not providing any curb cut or anything that would go across that median that's raised.
Yeah. Is the one just south of the roundabout, is that crosswalk present right now, or will that be added?
The crosswalk is present. The sidewalk on our side along Records is not in. I'm trying to remember, Bill, maybe you could look at the map. I don't know if there's a sidewalk on Eldon Gray on our side or not. So I kind of feel like there is some sort of sidewalk along that corner across to get up to the park. I'd have to look at it on a different map here really quick, and I can answer that in rebuttal if I need to.
No, I was really more just curious than anything else, John. Okay, thanks for that. I appreciate that.
Commissioner, I'm just looking at right now, there actually is a sidewalk on that part of the roundabout. It's just a short section that meets, so there, let me just clear this off and I'll just resketch it here. This sidewalk exists here. So you can, if you're coming from the village across, you can get there and you can get here today. But there's no other sidewalk that exists that would allow you to go really any farther on Eldon Gray or really any farther on Records, but we will be building that out completely on both directions. I just wanted to note that we are building a 10-foot kind of regional pathway on Fairview and on Records, and then a standard 5-foot sidewalk on Eldon Gray.
Okay, I appreciate that. Just last question, did you get any public comments when you had your neighborhood meeting? I didn't see any.
Meeting, but we have not had any public comment. I believe there's a few individuals that are here that have perhaps were at previous hearings with us. But no, Commissioner Grace, this is it's a plating process, but it's, the conditional use permit as previously approved is still the same.
Okay. Yeah, and I didn't see any in the materials either that I looked to hit online with the City of Meridian. So, okay, thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, anything else?
No.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
John, yeah, I do remember that was my only concern was the pedestrian traffic, right? And I'm sure it's a concern of yours on it too. And I do also remember some other mitigation things about maybe putting signs on there and saying like, hey, no public pathway or no crossway or no pedestrian walkway there in order to, or, having arrows, whatever the case is, in order to help mitigate people natural place to trap, right there.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Wheeler, yes, doing that on our side where we can control the signage is a very easy thing to do for public safety.
Anything else, commissioners? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Do we have anybody signed up?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson Seal. We have Larry Van Over in attendance.
Evening, sir. We'll need your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Larry Vanover, and my address is 3420 West Montrose Lane in Meridian, 83646. I'm a retired city engineer, traffic engineer for the state of Idaho. And I'm now on the board of the Meridian Senior Center. And I know that he said that the pedestrians won't be able to cross and they have to go either way, but they're not gonna stop. And as it is now, when we leave at 4:30, we can't go around the roundabout because the traffic is coming for 2 blocks beyond the roundabout. And the roundabout's too close to the intersection. And a lot of people are going past the used car lot as tried to cut off the intersection, and it's not working. And is this going to be 2 lanes in north or just 1 lane north? As we're right in and right out is a lot of traffic that's gonna come around the roundabout to go back to Fairview Avenue. So, and I'm representing the senior center because Tony was not able to be here with her husband,
Okay.
as he is. So, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. And I appreciate your testimony. And I mean, we've all had to drive in that area, and it's very busy as it was meant to be. But that's also, not necessarily what some of the folks that have lived there for a long time want to see. So I appreciate your comments. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody else?
Yes, Scott Dykstra.
Good evening, everybody. Scott Dykstra, 4260 East Venture Circle, Meridian, Idaho, 83646. So I was here last time. This little development, when you look at all of these plats and all of this information that you have on the screen in front of you, we are just off the edge of your map and your plat. So I'm here representing Venture Subdivision, which is the other access point where all of the traffic is going to be. So it's just fascinating. Every time Brighton brings this development up, they talk about Eldon Gray and the traffic on Eldon Gray. And Eldon Gray stops, and they never address Venture, which is where all of that traffic off of Eldon Gray has to go. And Venture Drive is a very small, narrow road. Used to have Bright Bank, Hillcrest Bank right in front of it, and there's 14 houses back there. And so we are gonna push all of this traffic back over to Venture. Still, we had an opportunity back when this was first proposed to take that road between the development and CarMax and bring that road out to Fairview and collect everything there, and you could have created a right turn onto that road between CarMax and this development, a right turn in, a right turn out off of Fairview Avenue. You could have completed Fairview Avenue with a curb and gutter. And I know this all goes back to Ada County Highway District, which is part of the challenge you guys have. Okay, number one, we didn't go to the public meeting because we weren't notified. We are outside of that 300-foot zone, so nobody tells us anything until we see your sign go up, and then we show up and say, what are they doing tonight? Okay? So they should have changed it so you have a right in, right out off of Fairview that would have taken the traffic off of Records. As it is right now, they're going to come up Records, turn right to get into this development. As they leave, they're going to come out onto Records and be forced to turn right on Eldon Gray, catch up with everybody else coming out on the east side of the property, and come down to Venture, my street, with 14 houses, and end up getting piled up on Venture, trying to get out onto Fairview again. Okay? So just be aware, when you look at a plat, there is a world outside of that plat, and I'm here to represent that world tonight. Okay? I would suggest that you look at that zone along there, look at CarMax and what they've done with the landscaping, and talk to Ada County Highway District about putting in a nice entry for the city of Meridian and making it something presentable. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Madam Clerk? Anybody else? Anybody raising their hand online? Nope.
Yes, there's a Sean MJ raising his hand.
We'll bring him in. Like Sean, can you hear us?
This is Sean Thompson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. If you would give us your name and address, and you can address the commission.
Yeah, my name is Sean Thompson. I live at 4292 Venture Place, Meridian, Idaho 83646.
Yep, go right ahead, sir.
So I'm a neighbor of Scott's. One of the issues I've had with a lot of the development on Eldon Gray and the park and the village is that the road that is Eldon Gray is only 36 feet wide. Venture Street is 39 feet wide. And you're going to be forcing a lot of traffic that's already detrimental to our little subdivision and also unsafe, because when people are traveling down Eldon Gray, they're flying 40, 50, 60 miles an hour, thinking that's a little thoroughfare where they can race their little cars. And we've had a ton of people driving down that road with cars parked on both sides, and you can barely get through that street. So what I'm afraid of is that this development is going to come in, which I wasn't even told about. I just saw the sign as well. And then you're going to be having, you can't even get two cars through there if two cars are parked on either side. And CarMax, when we went to that development sessions, they weren't supposed to park any of their trucks on Eldon Gray because everyone said that wasn't going to be any parking. But there's trucks parked there all the time, dumping cars off or sitting there for the next time they have to dump cars off or whatever. And it is really difficult to get down that street when there's a lot of traffic. If you have an event at the village, there's two lines of cars down that street. You can barely get through. So my concern is that we've already got safety issues on that street as it is, and then you're going to put in a 500 unit. And I know this has all been approved, but I'm kind of late to the party. But I wish they had at least widened that road to 39 feet so that at least if you're going to allow people to park on that street when you have no parking signs and people do it anyway, that they would at least have enough room to get through there. And that's going to happen. You've got this development, there's going to be visitors and they're going to park on the street, and we're not going to have a very small window to drive through there to get out. And it's already become very tough to get through that roundabout at 4, like in the morning, or at 4 or 5 o'clock because like Scott said, it's all the way backed up. I saw it during Christmas backed up all the way for almost all the way to U-Stick. We were just like blown away going, how do we get home? So, and we ended up having to turn around, get on U-Stick, go up to Cloverdale and come back on Fairview and drive into our subdivision. So I know that none of these things were addressed because there's still a problem. They put bumper curbs down the middle of our street to solve a problem that should have never been there in the first place. So that's my concern and that's my comments. And I wanted them on the record because I don't think anyone cares about this stuff.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate the testimony. And for the record, I was one of the people that were probably in that line coming off of U-Stick
Yeah,
around
it's
Christmas.
very,
So
it's very
totally
dangerous the way
understand that.
people are driving there. Thank you.
Thank you. There's nobody else online. Is there anybody else in the audience would like to testify? All right, would the applicant like to come back up?
Mr. Chair, for the record, John Wardle, Brighton, 2929 West Navigator, Suite 400, Meridian, Idaho 83642. Just wanted to acknowledge that the village had a transportation plan that had been reviewed and adopted a long time ago. And these things are, while we are here in 2024, improvements are continuing to occur. We are not deaf to those, but at the same time, we do have a roadway agency that does review these things. Going to Fairview is not an option. If it was, that would be great, but it's not an option. Records is a collector roadway, and it has been intended to take traffic, provide an alternative to Eagle Road as well, and getting access into the village. Venture and Eldon Gray, they are existing public roads as well. And I do know that they're both local streets. If there's a parking problem with those, it might be an opportunity for the neighbors and ourselves to all talk to ACHD about no parking signs if they are not existing today. Or if they do exist today and people are parking there, then that's a Meridian City enforcement element as well. We are working within what is there, trying to make improvements. I don't disagree that people will do things to try to simplify their life without thinking about the impact on other people. That goes for all of us. We are going to try to be good neighbors. We intend to continue to add to the value of the village, which has a great asset there, which is the regional park, which does bring a lot of people there. It is a natural draw as well as the village as well. And bringing people to live there was a goal of the cities. So again, not deaf to the comments made tonight, but we have discussed these with the highway district and we have worked with them to come up with solutions, and these are the solutions. So I stand for any questions that you might have or follow-up that you might have based on the project. But as I mentioned before, we do request your affirmation and forwarding this to the council for their review as well.
Commissioners, anything further? Commissioner Grace, Commissioner Lorcher?
No, thank you.
Okay. And this one's a tough one for me. So I kind of think of the village, you know, I'm old enough to have been a mall rat when I was young. So, and visited the mall area in Boise when I was younger, and soon grew up to avoid it like the plague. So fortunately or unfortunately, this area is kind of becoming the same way, where there's enough other alternatives for folks to go elsewhere, except for those that live there, which is, you know, fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it. So I know several people that live right in the area that are extremely happy with what they have there. because they have access to everything that they would want to, you know, movies, shops, you know, haircuts, stylist, hamburgers. And a, you know, a fantastic park with a lot of activities. So for some people that moved in and they have their, you know, 1 acre lot or something that's right next to that, probably not the lifestyle that they wanted, but that is the growth of the city and where it's going. So, and again, in my mind, this is kind of the mall of the modern day where it's built to and meant to be populated and busy. That's basically the whole idea behind it. So, I, you know, and we've spent a lot of time on the applications for this and a lot of testimony, a lot of late nights already. So I don't want to rehash too much. So you stole my thunder a little bit on the code enforcement. I mean, if that street truly is something that's supposed to be no parking, then code enforcement is the way to go. I mean, you can call city code enforcement, you can call police officers, you know, there's only so much that they're going to be able to do about it. But if they're constantly vigilant with that, then eventually people will stop doing it. You know, you can't get people to quit running across the road. So, you know, I don't know what to say for those folks other than, you know, I've read Darwin's works too. So, you know, takes all kinds. So that's just going to be part of it. I think it's a wise decision to not have anything that's going to cross records. I mean, it makes sense from a make your life easier standpoint to get from the development over into the village, but at the same time, that would take something that's already extremely busy and congested and, you know, further congest it for everybody around there. So, I mean, you know, folks are just going to have to learn to walk a little bit further on that one. And then, you know, as far as the entrance into Fairview, really that's, I mean, it's like the applicant said, I mean, I wish, you know, we as the commission or city staff or anybody else could wave a magic wand and get ACHD to change their mind. They won't. So this is one of the sticking points of this application for sure, is that we've deliberated about it endlessly. I think, you know, I think most of us would rather see that open to Fairview one way or the other. So would it eliminate all the problems? No. Would it alleviate some of the problems? Yes. But again, ACHD they own the roads. So there's a lot that ACHD does that I don't personally, you know, I personally don't agree with. So, and they make some applications like this even harder than they need to be, but they own the roads. So I would definitely recommend that if you have an avenue of ACHD to let them know. I mean, just like this hearing, they have mechanisms for the public to reach out. So, I mean, I would imagine everybody in the subdivision that you're in would be more than willing to sign something, call somebody, take some kind of action that may or may not be helpful in the long run. So any of that feedback is always helpful. So I've had several individuals come in here and change my mind. So I recommend that whatever you can do for your subdivision, for your community that you feel helpful, please do that. With that, I will quit rambling and let somebody make a motion on this. Oh, wait a minute. Yep, you're right. I was going to say, I almost got out of turn there. I'm getting rusty at this. So, does the applicant have anything further for us?
Do not.
Okay. Didn't know if you wanted to rebut my rebut.
No.
Good. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time tonight. With that, I will take a motion to close the public hearing for file number H 2023-0059.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2023-0059. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Public hearing is closed. Does anybody have anything further that they would like
Mr.
to add?
Chairman, I think you said it well. A lot of some of the sentiments I had. The only thing I would say that hopefully might be some consolation to the folks in the Venture subdivision is I'm hoping that folks might use that roundabout as a better way to get back onto Fairview. Particularly anybody who comes out of the new out of this new multifamily on Elder Gray. And even if you come out on records, it's a quick 180 on that roundabout to get west on Fairview or on Fairview. And if you're gonna go north, you just keep going on records. I'm hoping that there's not a lot of people who want to come out on Ventura and go left to go east on Fairview at busy moments, because that could be a long wait. So again, I sympathize like you, especially for homes that predate what's been put in this area, but I hope they see some relief in that fashion. So that's all I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Commissioner Lorcher, anything to add?
No, not really. Everything's been said.
Okay, thank you much. All right, with that, I'll take a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Right ahead.
Yeah, I wish we were a one-stop shop where we could take care of all the road jurisdictions, everything like that, because we do seem to hear more of those things and the conditions when they come up with the plats and stuff. But unfortunately, we have our limits on what we can do, and so there's other bodies there, and do give your voice, because ACHD does have its traffic plan during this construction side, and they have a tendency that, or at least whether they listen or do that or not, at least it's been said. So that's good. And with that, I'd like to make a motion for approval. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval of the city council of file number H-2023-0059 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of January 4th, 2004, with no modifications.
2000 and when?
2024.
2024. 2024. Sorry, went back a decade or a couple.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to recommend approval of file number H-2023-0059 as presented in staff report. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Thank you, everyone. And with that, I will take one more motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.